Good morning. My name is Dr. Paula McAlinden. I'm currently the president of ARICD, which is the Association for Research in Infant and Child Development. What I'm going to talk to you today is the six-phase process involving practitioners in the restandardization of the Griffiths 3 scales. I've used the Griffiths scales for many years in my work as a consultant community pediatrician. Initially, the original scales, and then from 2006, the GMDSAR, and then more recently from 2016, Griffiths 3. First of all, I'd like to start by thinking, how do babies and young children develop? The most important thing is that every child's development varies, and this is partly linked to the context in which they are growing up, their family, their country, different opportunities they're exposed to. Markers of developmental progress are also fairly interchangeable, so they're not quite predictable. Most important is the child's appetite for change leads them to be curious about the world about them. They love to explore this world, and this helps their development. Play is really important for children and helps them connect to the real world. And you'll all be amazed seeing how young children do imitative play, and they use pretend objects to pretend that they might be talking, or a toy phone that they might be talking on a phone like their parents. Every person's web of development is unique. I happen to be a twin, and my twin sister and I had different developments. And even as now, we have different skills and interests. There are periods of rapid change in child development, and also sensitive periods in the brain development. So if a child has any trauma, severe infection, at these sensitive times, it can affect their development. For every child, it's important to develop or to establish their developmental baseline. In the end, what we want is for all grown-up children to be able to reflect on their childhood with joy. They won't all have perfect childhoods, but hopefully with appropriate developmental assessment, we can help find their strengths and weaknesses, and where appropriate, provide intervention to help them reach their developmental potential and remember their childhood with joy. Thinking of the assessment of young children, the rapidly shifting nature of their development poses problems for the assessment of young children. And this is where the clinical skills and judgment of experienced practitioners are required. The Griffiths scales have been accorded worldwide recognition as a leader in the assessment of the development of children under 6 years. However, with any developmental test, it's important to take a fresh look from time to time at the underpinning constructs and variables of measures to ensure that they stay relevant. Child development and its assessment is a dynamic moving target, and therefore questions need to be asked constantly so we can answer the questions to help us decide what's relevant in a developmental test. These were the reasons we decided to revise the Griffiths scales of development from the previous assessments to create Griffiths 3. We recognise that input from practitioners is crucial in the development of psychological tests. This paper highlights a 6-phase process followed in revising Griffiths 3, which is a psychological test assessing the development of children under 6 years. The value of having a guiding plan that includes test practitioner input throughout, including after publication and training, is highlighted. So thinking first of all, who was involved in Griffiths 3? The important thing is it was a collaborative approach from the beginning, involving a team from ARICD, a team from the Nelson Mandela University in South Africa, led by Professor Louise Stroud. ARICD team was led by Dr. Elizabeth Green. And then from the beginning, we liaised very closely with Hographer, who are our publishers, and liaised with their publishing manager and their team in Oxford. We developed 6 phases when we were revising Griffiths 3. This included reimagining and co-creating through construct identification, the test items and task review, item design, piloting and standardization. It also included production of the new test, the release or launch of it, and development of subsequent training. Critically, these 6 phases were supported by practitioner input and feedback, and ensured that necessary constructs and new areas in the assessment of child development were included. These 6 guiding phases, which we had identified, provided a methodologically robust frame to the revision process. This slide shows the 6 phases, and while we will look at these in more detail in subsequent slides, phase 1 looked at the diagnostic process, phase 2 the item review, phase 3 looked at item design, phase 4 looked at piloting and standardization, phase 5 the production of the new test and the release or launch of it, and phase 6 looked at the training required to support the new test. So if we look at phase 1 in more detail, this was a very important stage. So rather than rush ahead, we took a step back, we did a detailed literature review, we got stakeholder feedback, and we did market research. This helped us to identify what was current in child development and what the practitioners and experts in the field wanted. So within phase 1, we did a detailed literature review. We held an Avenue of Learning workshop with some expert pediatricians, psychologists, and allied health professionals. Representatives of the ARICD Research Committee went to meet experts to discuss what they felt should be in the test and perhaps why they hadn't used previous versions of the Griffis scales. We also linked with practitioners who used the Griffis scales and those who had previously done so to find out strengths and weaknesses in the previous version of the Griffiths 3. And one of these was that people were saying the test is too long. We don't have enough time now in our clinical practice to use it. And this helped us plan for stage 2. At stage 2, we looked at each item in the test and did a fine-grain analysis. This helped us refine subscales. We looked at the underpinning constructs within different items. We also identified item gaps using constructs and construct maps. And then in phase 3, we moved on to item development. We developed 5 subscales, so we looked at items within each of these. We developed and wrote new potential items based on what was in need. We found the connecting points, established critical markers, and looked at any overlap between the various subscales. And we combined an experimental version. One of the key points in looking at the item was the desire to keep some of what was always associated with Griffiths. And one of this is the little brick boxes which come in 3 colours. And this was thought to be a very important item that we had to retain and was useful across age ranges and to show a range of skills for the child. However, when looking for new items, we developed a little ring pole, and we had this specially made for us. The important thing was that unlike other stacking poles, each of the pieces was the same size. So this made it another new piece, but also unique to Griffiths 3. Phase 4, we moved to piloting and standardization. The initial pilot of the study was carried out by our colleagues at the Nelson Mandela University. This allowed us to gather initial statistical information and then to decide which items needed some refinement. We then moved forward creating the final version of Griffiths 3. And then we developed across the UK and Ireland administration of the test for the standardization purposes. And we had a sample of boys and girls of varying ages under 6 years. Then the results from these assessments had detailed psychometric analysis, which allowed us to develop the norms for the various subscales. Phase 5 was the production and the release of the scales. This involved really close liaison with photographer or publisher. We had to produce specification for items of the kits, ensure they understood how the items were used and what the important features were. We finalised the record book and we drafted and then finalised the 3 manuals that support Griffiths 3. And this led to the launch in May 2016 of Griffiths 3. Linked to this in phase 6 was a whole new training. Previously, we had a 5-day face-to-face course, which some practitioners were finding it difficult to get time from work to attend. Looking at modern training practices, we developed a part 1 e-learning, which all new users have to do. And then this was followed by a reduced 3-day face-to-face course where the practitioners learned the skills of administering the new items. COVID-19 brought new challenges with face-to-face training. So we've since also gone on and developed a part 2 video module, which new users can do online. And they found this very useful before then undertaking a 2-day practical course. So looking at this, we moved from phase 1, looking at establishing the current thinking of the child development and its assessment. This included literature review, stakeholder feedback, market research. This moved on in phase 2 to construct and item review. And then in phase 3 to 5, we designed new items. We did a pilot study. We sampled and did data analysis. We drafted manuals, protocols, and other materials. And finally, this concluded with the launching and marketing of the new material. Phase 6 includes ongoing training around the world. The important thing, though, was that at all stages of the revision of Griffiths 3, there was a consultative process. And this was invaluable in the development of the test. With the Griffiths assessment, we ask the question, or the practitioner does, is this child developing like other children? We use a structured observation of the child engaged in meaningful play. We look at general measures of development, but the test can also be adapted for special contexts, both in practice with the child with delay and also for research. Using the constructs, it flags areas such as working memory, processing speed, attention, and socio-emotional aspects of development. Practitioners have fed back that they value having an overall developmental measure with discrete data, which allows them to analyse a child's strength and weakness. However, we were aware it's not possible to design a single scale which is appropriate in all different cultures and environments around the world. What we did, though, with the Griffiths 3 through its 6-phase revision process was to design Griffiths 3 so that it would be as culturally fair as possible. More specifically, the 6th phase allows for ongoing community of practice and ongoing provision of support to practitioners in other countries through the translation into different languages and the validation for use in those countries of Griffiths 3. And this is coordinated by the ARICD Research Committee. Who should be doing assessments? Originally, Griffiths 3, which is a closed test and not was limited to use by psychologists and pediatricians. Several years ago, practitioners who could carry out the test was extended to include allied health professionals and specialist nurses such as health visitors who were working in a multidisciplinary team, because we recognised a multidisciplinary team approach is best in the interest of the child. And Griffiths 3 allows for a community of practice. Equally, we're also aware the training of practitioners in different countries internationally does vary, and in some countries, some therapies are available and others this isn't the case. Therefore, as Griffiths 3 and the use of it has spread worldwide with training in Kenya, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, South Africa, Australia, many countries in Europe and the United Kingdom, we have looked at certain projects and we're trying to do enhanced opportunities to look at different groups of multi-professional teams working together, and on a pilot basis, allowing those teams to be trained in the use of Griffiths 3 to try and find out who are the best practitioners for doing the assessment. In the revision process, practitioners were found to be a valuable source of information because of their experiences using the previous test and with professional knowledge. Creating a continuous feedback mechanism within a phased approach provides for meaningful interdisciplinary engagement with practitioners worldwide, and this advances the scope, quality, and use of the test. Therefore, we really want to encourage revision teams to consider using a similar process and engagement methods explored in this study when they're undertaking their own projects. And looking forward, it's important to find what stimulates new generation of children, have defined guiding principles, take note of things that inform the revision of measures, such as discoveries made through ongoing research. You will, however, have to make brave decisions about how much to change in a measure to keep it contemporary. In doing this, be mindful of underpinning and emerging constructs, such as working memory, attention, processing speed, attachment, and emotional development, and be willing to reconceptualize these. Know that there's no universality of link in the remediation in the development assessment. The success of the revision of Griffiths 3 can be seen in the debate that was stimulated regarding the scales and the detailed feedback obtained from current and potential stakeholders. This is ongoing as we move towards the next edition of Griffiths 3. The revision process of a developmental test can in many ways be likened to a railway system. This begins with a single main route that forks into a number of district lines. Although these lines initially continue in the same direction as the main route, each junction brings forth a greater chance of divergence. Some of these tracks eventually lead to distant ends, but others will continue to run parallel to the main route. Finally, I'd like to encourage you as part of your research or revision projects, rather than be discrete or apart within a community, to really commit to be taking part as part of that community and working together to achieve the maximum for your project. Thank you very much for listening.